Hi, my name is Jackie Sue Grayla, and I am currently working towards my bachelor's in human services. I am doing this for addiction family counseling class, and the movie I chose is The Blind for my case study. The Blind is the true story of the Robertson family, or the Duck Dynasty family, as they have become to be known as. The movie The Blind is based on the true story of the Robertson family. Phil Robertson struggles with alcohol addiction in this movie. In the very beginning of the movie, it shows a glimpse of his childhood. And in his childhood, his mother had struggled with mental illness in the 1950s. And so she would be taken to mental hospitals often, and he would be left there with his three siblings which because his father was gone working. It showed Phil taking on the role of the caregiver and hero, trying to make everything okay. Um, as he grows up and everything seems okay. He's in high school, he's pursuing football. He ends up falling in love with Kay, and they get married at a young age and have a child at a young age. He continues to play, ends up going to college, playing college football, but he gives that career up to be with his family and take care of his family. He then decides to become a teacher. And once he starts becoming a teacher, up until this point, there's no really mention of drinking or anything like that until he becomes a teacher and he starts hanging out with another teacher. And then he starts to go out and partying. Taking a look at the DSM-5, it does show that Phil does meet the criteria for a substance abuse disorder. Some of the criteria that Phil meets is that he starts spending more time partying at home with his family. He starts drinking at work while teaching. He lies to his wife and family about his alcohol use, and he quits his job at as a teacher to drink more. Phil ends up spending most of his money on alcohol and partying instead of paying bills or on his family. This starts to put a strain on his marriage. He becomes violent towards Kay. So he is now becoming violent and aggressive towards Kay anytime Kay mentions anything about his alcohol use. And so then as his Phil's addiction starts to progress, you start to see the damage on the family progress also. You see Kay starts taking on the role of the caregiver. She tries any way she can to save Phil. Um, Phil basically leaves her alone to raise their three boys with little money many times. Kay stands by Phil's side and tries to figure out ways to help him. She goes through trying to get his family involved, to getting a preacher involved, and every time Phil reacts towards anger or minimizes his alcohol addiction. Um, there is at one point Phil ends up buying a bar. And Kay knows this is a bad idea. However, after Phil makes promises of how he's going to help their marriage and family, she supports him in this venture. And you start to see the dynamic really getting Phil just basically doing whatever he wants, and Kay just trying her best to hold on and trying to make this marriage work. And in the end, the boys are just being just drugged through all of this and witnessing a lot of this. Um, After Phil becomes a bar owner, his drinking only gets worse, and by this point, he has now made it into as a severe addict. his addiction has become severe now. The strain on his family gets worse. His brother and sister try to help him. However, Phil denies having a problem and becomes agitated and unreceiving to his family's attempts to point out his drinking problems, displaying addictive behaviors such as denial and minimization. In one volatile argument with his wife, Phil says, "I'm not the problem, you're the problem." This is a this is a common struggle with addicts, pointing the finger at other people and not taking any ownership for themselves or their problems. Um, the this this Kay then says he has been her problem for 10 years. Phil's addiction has impacted his family, especially Kay's life. She has cleaned up his messes and tried to make excuses for his behavior. Her sons have bore witness to Phil's erratic behavior and absence for years. All of his three children seem like the lost child in the movie because they are in the shadows. You don't really see too much of him interacting with his children. Actually, at times he'll tell, at one point, he kicks her out of the house and tells her, "Take your three sons with you." So you don't see him connected to them. It doesn't show any really father and son moments. It's mainly the dynamic of Phil and Kay and their volatile relationship. Um, Phil starts to receive consequences because of his addiction to alcohol. He loses his bar, his kids, and his wife. After he kicks Kay out of the house, he ends up getting in a car wreck while he's intoxicated. However, this does not stop him. He just keeps going. He's getting just like with addiction and what we've learned throughout the chapters, he's receiving these consequences, yet nothing is changing his behavior. He's actually getting worse. He's not stopping what he needs to. While Phil is dealing with his consequences, Kay now is on her own and she is starting to break the codependency cycle. She goes on her own and she goes to a pastor who helps her. They put her in a place of her own with her three sons and she starts a job and she starts to get independent in her own. She doesn't need Phil and she's not relying on Phil and she's actually starting to, you can tell she's starting to gain some confidence and not become so codependent with Phil, letting him do what he's got to do, and she's doing what she needs to do, and she's taking care of her children. Um, Phil ends up going into the woods and going deeper into his addiction. His brother takes his sons to see him. He is in a drunken stupor and has the boys leave. He yells at him to leave because he's drunk and he's like stumbling and it shows that the boys are very scared of him and are unsure of him, like how to act around him in this scene, which is a common occurrence in families who deal with an addictive parent. uh, then finally, ends up hitting the bottom out in the woods by himself. He starts to reflect on the pain he has caused his family. He hits his knees and cries out. He then tries to get Kay back with promises. However, because she's worked on herself and she's gained some confidence herself, she tells him, "Promises don't mean anything to me. You have to get help. You need to get help for your addiction." And so he ends up doing that. He reaches out to a pastor who counsels him, and Phil decides to be born again with Jesus. This proves to be life changing for him. He turns his life around, stops drinking, and becomes a better father, husband, and man. This was a happy ending that does not always happen in families with addiction. The therapy that I would recommend for the family while for the family is family of origin. This would help Phil, especially as he came from a family where he was the caregiver and his mother struggled with mental health. Also, Kay also had a mother who was an alcoholic. So going back to their root, back to their how they grew up in their belief systems and things like that would be good for them and would help them not only as America but also as parents in their family as a whole. And that's it. Thank you.